Hey everyone, it's Chapman Hamburg. I'm here in my studio and I'm super excited to be sharing these free art lessons with you all. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while and just haven't made it happen. And this whole crazy time we're going through with this pandemic and knowing that there's all these kids at home, not at school, helped encourage me to just get these art lessons out and to you guys. So I hope you enjoy them. And since I'm kind of just throwing these together at the last second, you might hear my kids in the background or different stuff like that, just real life happening. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy them. So for this first lesson, I'm going to be going over some of just the basic fundamentals of drawing. We're going to be doing a 1 through 9 value scale and talk about shading and shadow and light and how to create the illusion of form by rendering a sphere. So let's get started. So this is one of my first lessons I like to do with my students. When you look at the world around you, you see shadow and light. And we're going to talk about how we can use that to create forms. So we're going to start off with a value scale on the top here, and we're going to start by drawing 9 boxes, 9 squares. So you guys can draw these along with me, and I'm just drawing with my pencil 9 boxes kind of lightly, trying to get them the same size. Eight, 9. Okay, now I'm going to label these above that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, now the number 1 is going to represent our lightest light, and we're going to do number 9 as our darkest dark. And then the 1 will be just the white of the paper. I want to talk about pencils here for a second. So pencils are made of graphite, and you have different grades. So here, this is like an HB, which is your middle one, and then 2H, the graphite is harder, and therefore it's lighter. And 4B all the way to 6B, the graphite gets softer and then becomes darker. So I'm going to be talking about that, but if you just have like a standard pencil at home, that will totally work as well. So I'm going to start with my value number 9. So I'm going to be using my 6B pencil because that's a softer, darker pencil. And I'm going to start by shading this in. And what I want to do here is I want to see how dark can I get with my pencil. I'm trying to see what my range is to work with. And that's exactly what this whole scale is. It's to help us see what we have to work with in our drawing when we're shading. Okay, so there's my darkest dark, my value number 9. And now number 1 is going to be the white of the paper. Now I can take like my HB and I'm going to do my mid value. So I want it to be halfway between my 5, my 1 and my 9. Notice how I'm holding my pencil from the back and not like really tight like this. That helps me create an even surface. And there we go. Now I'm going to get my like 4B maybe and do value number 7. So that's going to be halfway between my 5 and my 5 and my 9. So trying to kind of fill it in evenly, like get in those little dots. Okay, that looks about right. Now I might get like my 2H and do value number 3 halfway between my 1 and my 5. So I'm going to try to work really lightly. Okay, now I want to do all the ones in between. So now do value number 2. So even lighter than my 3, trying to keep it super, super light, barely applying any pressure. Okay, so I want each one to be a step darker. Now I'm going to do my 4 with an HB pencil. And now I'm going to do my 6. So I want it to be darker than my 5, but lighter than my 7. Something like that might work. And now I'm going to get like my 4B to do my value number 8. Okay, so you can see each one is going a step darker all the way to my 9. I might clean this up just a little bit. And you might want to make small changes like, okay, my 4 and 5 look pretty similar, so I might kind of darken up these light patches on my 5. Same thing here, and try to get them working. So now the next thing we're going to do is we'll go back to the value scale, but now we're going to draw a circle for our sphere. And I'm just going to do that with my HB and try to get a nice big circle so I have room to shade here and leave some room down here for the cast shadow. So maybe something like this. And you can always use like a piece of tape or something to help you with your circle if you need to. Okay. So you can see it takes me a few tries to kind of get my circle just right, and then I can use my eraser to kind of clean it up a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to think about which direction the light source is coming from. So I'm going to have my light source coming from here. So I'm going to just write out my light source. If you can read my sloppy handwriting. And now I'm going to, so I'm thinking of it coming down this direction, and it's going to be hitting my ball. And I'm actually going to draw 2 parallel lines coming down on the edges. And I want these to kind of be parallel, which means they're going to go side by side in the same direction. I'm also going to draw a line here kind of explaining where my tabletop is, how it's hitting the table. And now, so I'm going to place a line here for the edge of my shadow. And we call this the core shadow, or the bed bug line, or the Terminator. It has different names. And if I draw a line perpendicular to these, that can help me see where it should start here on the edges, and then it's going to come around like that. When I explain this to my students in my classroom, I usually have like an actual sphere lit up to explain what I'm trying to teach, but I don't have that with me today. Okay, so now I'm going to start shading this in with a maybe like a 4B. So this is going to be our shadow shape. I'm going to start off with something, just a simple tone. Okay, so this is my shadow and my light. And we're gonna wanna render this all out. But to do that, I wanna talk about having two separate families, our lights and our darks. So we're gonna use values 1 through 5 to represent our lights. And we're gonna use values 6 through 9 to represent our darks. And in different lighting situations, it might be different, but this is kind of helping us group the lights and the darks separately and use this scale as a guide to render out our drawing. The next thing I want to do is explain the cast shadow, which is the shadow being cast onto the ground plane. So if you look, this is my cast shadow of my hand, the shadow on the paper. So if the light's coming from here at an angle, the cast shadow would fall below and it would hit along this line and along this line. So it might look something like this. So in terms of our values, the darkest dark is going to be right below the object on the cast shadow. So that's where it's going to be darkest. So I can get my like 6B and kind of push extra firm down here. So as it comes out from there, it's going to get more reflective light and it will become lighter. Slowly shading this all in. The other thing is the edge of the cast shadow is going to be sharper, right closer to the object here, and then over here it gets softer. And I can use my finger to kind of like rub that out, or you could use like a stomp or like a paper towel or something. And remember, it should be 6 or darker because this is within the shadows, the cast shadow. So I'm using my value scale as a guide. Okay, now within the sphere, we're gonna have our cast shadow, our form, our core shadow. Along here where it's going to be darker. So it's darker along the core shadow. And then it gets lighter as it comes around to the edge of the ball, and that's because there's reflective light hitting the table and bouncing back up into the bottom of here, so it's going to be dark and then get a little bit lighter. And as I work, I want to kind of clean things up. Okay, now we're gonna, so notice that I should have 6 through 9 within here. So shouldn't get darker too light, or it will look like a light rather than a shadow. Now I can get my